Oh. Chapter 2. Captured Queen. Morning came way too soon. I didn't have to be up early, but my brain was trained to wake at a specific hour. Even without my alarm, my eyes popped open an hour after daylight. I was just lucky I didn't have to actually get up and go to class. I rolled over for the 20th time, mashing my face into the pillow in the hope I could suffocate myself back to sleep. Or maybe just into a coma. I wasn't picky. I lifted my head and glared at the display panel on my bedside table. I'd stayed up far too late reading about Earth's fairy mythology. It had been a pretty fascinating read, really. But as I flopped onto my back, throwing an arm across my eyes to block out the daylight, I was definitely doubting the decision to stay up until who knows when. 4 o'clock hadn't been the best time for reading, but it had gotten my mind off the evening's events prior to that, and that had kind of been the point. Still, probably hadn't been a good idea when I was going to wake up at 7 o'clock. I finally gave up and rolled out of bed with another groan. I just have to catch a nap later on. Might as well just throw my entire sleep schedule out while I'm at it. I stumbled to the kitchen for a glass of water, because I still didn't have anything else in the house. Last night had too many distractions. I'd been too freaked out to place an order for groceries, which meant the kitchen was still empty. And a quick check confirmed all the morning slots were already taken. That meant going shopping in person, even though I didn't really want to. I turned on the news as I leaned against the counter and yawned into my glass of water. A woman's face fuzzed into view, hovering over the image from last night. The image was of the fountain where I'd seen the crowd cluster the night before. Several officers were standing around it, talking to one another and a few random onlookers. The anchor began to discuss the young woman assaulted in an alley by an unregistered Esper after the onlookers dispersed and the culprit fled. The scene shifted to the alley where I'd encountered that man. Oh dang, you on the news, girl. Most domes on both sides of the planet require some kind of registration process for any human with an EA score above the planetary standard. Though cities and nations differ in their policies regarding Esper regulations and what must be done with Espers, it's common to require them to be at least placed on a registry. Many places, such as New Albion, also require young Espers to go through some kind of training to control their abilities and acquire accredited certification stating such. As Endgame is one of the only places on the planet where one can undergo this kind of training, it is common for young Espers to be claimed and recruited into Endgame's academy. Unregistered, or rogue Espers, are those that fly under the radar and somehow avoid detection. This can be easy in domes where testing and reporting is lax, but can happen in more stringent domes as well. And there are people who strive to avoid detection due to regulatory policies or not wanting their lives defined by their abilities. There are sometimes policies regarding higher-ranking Espers that force them into specific career paths or narrow their choices down to joining Endgame. It is also known that other factions may try to recruit or else pose a danger to unaffiliated Espers. Oh, is that why everyone's so interested in our girl? Each place has its own policies for handling unregistered Espers. The consequences often vary based on the rank of the Esper, and some places do not have many clear policies for dealing with adult Espers at all. Most governments have little incentive to penalize them harshly, though. But Endgame is always eager to recruit adult Espers, if only to keep them out of other factions who might also be keen to acquire their skills. And historically, governments haven't always been interested in clashing with Endgame over the treatment of Espers. However, with the advent of the fairy phenomenon, this may be set to change as more and more Espers are avoiding childhood detection protocols and desperately trying to avoid forced recruitment in any number of factions willing to go to any length to get them, Endgame included. I wonder if our girl's been hiding under the radar for some time. Is that why her hair turned white? I have questions! And to my embarrassment, there was definitely a recording of the incident. Watching a censored version of myself flail my way away from an attacker was definitely how I wanted to start my day. Though I should just be grateful I was censored. But I still felt my cheeks grow uncomfortably warm. as if my kitchen appliances were judging the way I'd forgotten every self-defense move I knew when faced with an actual assailant. It's not the same when you're facing someone in an alley and not a gym with protective gear and mats on the floor. Seeing the report reminded me to check if the information I sent in last night had gone through. I set the glass of water down and pulled up a visual of any messages left while I'd been sleeping. Sure enough, there were 2 from the safety department. One was one of those silly messages notifying me that I'd sent in a report, as if I didn't already know I sent in a report. The other was a notification informing me that, as a witness, I would need to come at my earliest convenience to answer some questions in person. I made a face at that. It wasn't really convenient at all, but I didn't think I'd get out of it if I responded with that. I should probably just get it over with. There goes my afternoon. Well, I need to go get groceries anyway. Hopefully there wasn't too much they needed to ask. They already had footage of it all, so I wasn't sure what else I could tell them in a face-to-face interview. Beyond potentially implicating myself in the shattering of someone's window with my mind, of course. I wondered if that was you. Which I really did not want to do today. Or ever. I closed the interface and frowned at the news report, catching just the tail end. It said nothing about my rescuer. They didn't show any footage of him either. It seemed like that man, ARI, was at least right about him being an Esper. It made the shattered window easier to explain. And I didn't want to have to lie about it. For the time being, they were pinning it all on drug use and suggesting it was evidence of another small crime ring in the city related to Crimson. Then again, they would pin everything on Crimson if they could. They insisted every crime in Delphine had its roots in Crimson, and the organization allegedly had its claws pretty deep in New Albion as well. But I guess it would be up to the criminal division of the safety department. Everything on the news was speculation. I wasn't looking forward to answering their questions at all. Hopefully, one interview was all they would need. It wasn't like anything terrible had happened to me. I didn't want to make a bigger deal of it than necessary. If they expected me to agree to press charges, they were going to be disappointed. I just wanted him to get some help. I didn't want to get him into trouble, though I guess that was inevitable regardless of what I did. I bit back another yawn. If I didn't hurry and get the shopping done, I'd run out of time. But there was still an opportunity for a late brunch if I could beat the crowds this morning. This time I'll just stick close to home, though. There was a grocer at the end of the block, and they had a hydroponic garden so you could pick your own produce, which was fantastic. After that, I suppose I'd have to go give my statement in person. I leaned on the counter, rubbing a finger against my lower lip. I needed to carefully plan what I was going to tell them. Though I didn't think sounding too rehearsed was wise. I didn't want to reveal that I could have been responsible for that window shattering like that. I had managed to keep that little fact swept under the rug for so long. Far too long to be outed now. Though it wouldn't exactly have been the first time I'd caused something like that, that was for sure. I placed the glass in the sink and went to get dressed. It was just that there weren't many people who knew I was an Esper. Trent was the only one I'd ever told. Even Mum didn't know. Your own mother doesn't know? You told some random boyfriend? And you didn't tell your own mother? Girl. What? That's crazy to me. Why doesn't how? I have questions. Although maybe the first incident happened when she was with said boyfriend. In which case, that would kind of make sense. Oh no, Mom doesn't know. No, we gotta keep secrets again. It's fine. Do I get a little brownie friend in this game too? Because that would be delightful. And as far as I knew, no one else in my family had ever exhibited anything other than the planetary standard of 1 to 2 on the EA scale. Oh boy, we got an anomaly, everybody. What is on the EA scale exactly? The EA scale, literally ESP ability scale, is a 15-point system used to determine the strength of one's psionic abilities. Scoring on the EA scale is applied similarly to fairy espers, but they can be difficult to rank, as their abilities don't always align with the standard ranking system. Scores of 1 to 2.9 are considered the planetary standard. Everyone on the surface of Arcalis and Terra possess at least this much psi ability. It does not allow for active use of telekinesis of any kind, but does give people a sort of mild clairvoyance and abnormal mental focus that allows them to utilize the nanosystem effectively. People who score between 2.5 to 2.9, this are probably just between 2.5 to 2.9, are sometimes referred to as pseudo-espers. They don't rank high enough to begin exhibiting telekinesis, but have mildly above average clairvoyance or precognition. In other words, their sixth sense is noticeably stronger than normal. They may be really good at reading people, or just have exceptional instincts about things. To qualify as an Esper, one must have a score of at least 3 on the EA scale. Those who score below a 3 have just enough psi to take full advantage of the nanosystem without coming to physical harm, but develop no actual psychic ability. 3 to 7.9 is considered infantry or unranked Esper. Most develop weak to moderate telekinesis and clairvoyance, but do not develop the specialized abilities associated with ranked Espers. To obtain an official ranking, an Esper usually needs to possess an EA score of at least 8. Rooks, knights, and bishops have been known to reach scores of 12 to 13.9, while king and queen ranks are exclusive to this range. Generally, the only Espers to rank above 14.5 on the scale are queen rank. Oh dang, if it goes to 15, no wonder they're the queens. Okay, good to know. My brothers and parents were normal. Grandparents, cousins. So you have brothers plural, no sisters. None of them ranked high enough to be considered a true Esper. As for myself, I didn't know what my exact score might be. I certainly had the ability. I'd even tested positive in one of the many assessments we'd had back in primary. But when they did the genetic tests and scans, I didn't have any physiological indicators. 'Cause you're a fairy one? A reassessment of my practical ability didn't show any psi traits, so I'd been labeled a false positive. But I wasn't. There had always been little incidents throughout the years. Nothing major, nothing I couldn't hide from most people anyway. I hadn't planned to tell Trent either. He only found out because we'd lived together for a while. Okay, so it wasn't like the starting incident happened with him. But, okay, so you've been showing things since primary school, and you've been able to hide it all that time from your mom when you were living together, but not from your boyfriend. I believe you. And it was hard to hide it from someone interested in studying Espers. Okay, that's a good point. If he's studying Espers, then he would know what signs to look for, but Mom wouldn't necessarily. Okay, I take it back. I apologize, Morgan. Continue. But he had kept the secret. If anyone could understand why I might want to, he could. Even he had doubted that I ranked much over 3 or 4 on the EA scale. Nothing I'd ever managed to do indicated I could be stronger than that. As a child, even that would have been enough to get Endgame's attention. And I didn't want to be recruited for this ability. By them or by anyone else. Well, you're gonna, so prepare your butt, girl. Endgame is also referred to as the Planetary Defense Organization. They are a quasi-military force made of Espers, and their goal is to help keep the peace across Arcalis, Terra, Dione, and even New Terra. Endgame has a very broad function that covers protecting, defending, and keeping peace. It allows them to get involved, and hired for, anything from simple guarding or escort jobs to negotiating treaties or fighting organized crimes. They are sometimes consulted on smaller investigations, but their most frequent jobs tend to involve Esper crime. They are, officially, politically neutral, so they're sometimes asked to oversee various kinds of negotiations between hostile nations, states, colonies, and the like. They also help with disaster relief during times of natural disasters. They sometimes provide security for important events. They act as a sort of border patrol and protection for the Twilight Wastes, preventing incursions by groups that shouldn't be there. They've even been hired to oversee important business negotiations. They answer to no law enforcement group and try to keep a neutral stance when it comes to how any nation or city-state is ruled. Generally speaking, they err on the side of a nation's sovereignty and will only get involved in politically charged situations when asked to do so. They tread carefully in these instances for fear of making the situation worse, but this means they sometimes do not get involved in cases where their help might genuinely be needed. This has caused some bitterness and resentment from people who believe Endgame doesn't care about their suffering. While the group enjoys a great deal of public support, particularly in some regions, they also have many enemies and detractors. Though Endgame technically has jurisdiction across Arcalis, there are places their involvement is unwelcome, and they are known to be wary of forcing themselves into these places. Endgame also technically has the right to recruit any Esper into their organization, or remove any potentially dangerous Esper from the public. Not every city or nation agrees with this policy, and Esper regulations vary widely across the planet. Even so, Endgame remains the largest and most powerful consolidated Esper force on the planet, and one of the many places where young Espers can learn to use their abilities safely, as it runs a large academy designed exclusively for this purpose. Endgame is made up of multiple departments and divisions, including combat divisions, support divisions, research divisions, and so on. The Endgame forces are headed by the highest-ranking king, currently Magnus Ulrich, who is answerable to and sits on a council of non-Espers. Interesting. Okay. Good to know. But we learned a lot about Endgame, actually, so that was some useful information for later, probably. I just never wanted that. Endgame's work was important. They were the planetary defense organization. They helped keep the peace across Arcalis, Sierra, Dione. I'd heard they even made it up to the new Terra station, and those guys rarely wanted anything to do with us surface dwellers. New Terra is a large space station in high orbit around Arcalis. Originally constructed from repurposed parts of colony ships, the station has orbited the planet from the earliest years of colonization. New Terra is recognized as a sovereign nation of its own, but remains largely uninvolved with surface issues. New Terra has isolationist policies, and rarely allows surface dwellers into the station. I can't wait to go visit it in this game. As its citizens do not possess nanites, there are no N-class Espers on New Terra, and they are viewed with some level of suspicion and trepidation. When surface dwellers are allowed aboard, they are required to wear encounter suits or stay in designated areas to avoid nanite contamination. Some level of nanite suppression is also enforced through the station. New Terra is divided into 3 separate sectors which are sealed off from each other. Ventus Terra is the uppermost part of the station. Solemn Terra comprises the middle and largest sector, while Antrim Terra makes up the lower levels of the station. Terrans tend to view themselves as a truer form of humanity, since they are the only ones to not be altered by nanites. In its own way, it was incredible. And fascinating. That just wasn't the path I'd chosen. I wanted to go where I wanted to go, not where I was told to go. I wanted to research, to learn about the history of this world, not be some sort of psychic soldier. But more than anything, I think my fear had always been that I'd be chained down by this ability, that I wouldn't be me anymore. I'd be an Esper. I didn't want to be defined by that. But there would probably be no choice if people knew about me. Espers made up such a small portion of the population, far less than even 1%. Even the weaker ones were highly valued. Plenty of organizations wanted low or mid-level infantry that managed to avoid being recruited to Endgame. Once a person reaches a score of 3 on the EA scale, they are considered a full Esper and are classified as an infantry-level Esper. These are the most prevalent type of Esper, making up a little over 95% of the total Esper population. Dang, so it's like 1% of the whole population is Espers, and then 95% of the 1% is a 3. Huh. Infantry rarely develop any skills beyond low mid-level clairvoyance and telekinesis. Perhaps mild precognition or an affinity for shields and psionic defenses are possible as well. They are considered unranked Espers. Low-level infantry, who make up over 80% of infantry-level Espers, are not always recruited by Endgame, and they are often allowed to work outside the organization and continue living normal lives. Even so, they're frequently shoehorned into jobs as bodyguards, public safety officers, or other lines of work that utilize their skills. It's much more difficult for a mid-ranked infantry level to go undetected by Endgame, and as they pose a bigger threat to normal people due to their increased telekinetic ability, Endgame actively recruits them. However, other organizations do as well, and there are still a fair number of mid-ranks that work out in the real world. In many places, infantry that are detected in adulthood but do not cause problems are placed on a watch list. Upper-level infantry are highly sought after by any organization that isn't Endgame. They are the strongest unranked Esper and make up a large part of the Esper population. High-level infantry are the only group known to be able to achieve promotion, when an Esper can increase their psi and change its structure to the point they can change their rank. This is an ability unique to a very small group of people, and is both difficult and dangerous to achieve. I can see why the chess analogy stuck. And ranked Espers? In very high demand if you somehow manage to use your connections to dodge Endgame. But all of those jobs were the same. Security, contract and business negotiations, law enforcement. If I had been discovered as a child, that's all that would have awaited me. So I kept it secret, thinking that if I could just hide it until I was out of school, I'd be fine. Adults had way more leverage than children when it came to that sort of thing. And so far, it had never been a problem. So far. And we want to keep it that way, but we won't. I paused just outside the door to my building and took a long, slow breath to clear my head. I would just have to hide it, as I always had. Besides, I had never tested positive again after that one time. With the situation at hand, they had no reason to jump to any specific conclusions about me. It would be fine. I would be fine. Telling myself that, I decided to get on with my day and not dwell on it. There was a man talking, or arguing, with the building security when I stepped outside. I might have completely ignored them as I stepped around them. But there was a second man nearby, his hair fading from silver at the roots to pink at the ends. I nodded politely as I passed, my thoughts turning towards shopping and the things I was going to purchase. But I didn't get very much further down the footpath.
Hold on, wait! Miss! Wait!
My heart started thumping against my ribs at the sound of an unfamiliar man just behind me. Even though he wasn't strange or bedraggled, and he wasn't threatening me, I turned back hesitantly. Whoa. You got an interesting look. Yes? Hello? Hello, everyone?
Winter, you're scaring her. Wait, what?
The pink-haired man looked startled at the very thought that maybe it wasn't a great idea to run after a woman while shouting at her. What was your first clue? Also, you're not romanceable, but you are romanceable. I recognize your picture. I happen to notice that you're dressed in black. And the guy from an ARI was dressed in white. So is that like the white and black chess pieces on the board? Question mark? Questions. The dark-haired man quickly joined him, flicking his worried gaze back to me. He shoved his hands in his pockets and offered an uncertain smile.
I apologize if my partner startled you, but you're Morgan Leone, correct?
It wasn't a question. I narrowed my eyes as I returned his frank gaze. He was fairly well-dressed and tidy. The pink-haired man beside him was dressed more casually, making the two of them an unusual pair. But nothing about their attire gave any clues to who they might be. Your partner?
I'm Reuben Kelner, a special investigator with Utpol. This is my partner, Winter Ashton. You can check your interface to verify our identities.
Winter Ashton. A United Triad Police Organization. This international investigative body has jurisdiction throughout the Triad and with some of their allies. They work across multiple nations and city-states. sharing access and data on crime and criminals on both local and international investigations. There is a General Assembly that meets twice a year to make decisions regarding the organization, and each participating dome has a central bureau that coordinates with other domes. They fight a variety of crimes, including severe cybercrimes, terrorist activities, and international criminal networks. And they have a special investigations unit that primarily handles crimes against or perpetrated by Espers. As such, they frequently interface with Endgame. There are no members of Utpal on the night side of the planet, and the organization has no jurisdiction there. They often have difficulty investigating crimes perpetrated by criminals centered on the night side, or that flee back there to avoid prosecution. Okay. I bit my lip and did just that. And sure enough, like all public employees, their identification was openly available. That would also explain how they knew who I was. Their positions would have allowed them access to my full information as well. Special investigators, huh?
I didn't mean to run after you like that, but your doorman wouldn't let us in. Reuben here had been arguing with him for 10 minutes already. When I saw you come out, I just followed without thinking.
Building security is fairly tight, so...
You're a student living alone as well. I'm sure they're extra cautious when people come looking for you.
I don't know about that. There's just a process visitors have to go through, that's all. This unexpected meeting had me on edge again. Why would they come looking for me if I was supposed to go in for an interview anyway? I must have looked as nervous as I felt because Winter gave me a sheepish grin as he took a step away, tipping his head in the direction the fountain incident had taken place.
Reuben, I think I'll head down to the crime scene and have a look around, if you don't mind. It's not that far from here. You can handle this on your own, right? I'll be fine. We'll catch up later. See you. It was nice to meet you, Miss Leone.
He started away from us with a slow jog. Reuben watched him until he was gone before he turned back to me.
Sorry about that, Miss Leone. We have a lot of ground to cover today.
Though the abruptness with which Winter left made it fairly apparent it was more for my benefit than anything. It's all right. But I hope you realize I already received a request to give a statement about the incident last night. I didn't realize someone would be stopping by.
This morning they turned the incident over to our department, and I'm not sure they'd have informed you before your scheduled interview. I wanted to talk to you personally, so we decided to stop by while we were in the area. Unless you're too busy at the moment.
So it's not that I'm busy. I'm really sorry, but I actually am busy right now, or I'll come by this afternoon as planned. Okay, so this isn't actually one of the common route choices that leads me to ARI, so I can just pick whatever I feel like, I guess? What do I feel like? Does it matter? I'll play it vague, maybe. It's not that, really. I just haven't eaten today. I've been busy with exams and my kitchen is empty. I was planning to do some errands, that's all. But if you need a statement now, I can postpone shopping.
Why don't we talk over brunch instead? I just wanted to get your perspective on the attacker and exactly what happened.
Aren't you on duty, Detective Kelner?
You can call me Reuben. Please.
Oh no, I'm gonna fall for you badly.
And I am allowed to eat during the workday, I hope you realize. I just can't let you treat me. That's what we call a bribe.
First, I wasn't going to offer to treat you. Second, I don't have a reason to bribe you, unless you're accusing me of a crime. But I'll have you know I was the one assaulted. Reuben shuffled closer, perhaps taking the teasing as a sign I had dropped my guard a little.
No, you're not under suspicion of anything. It's just that recordings can only show so much. It's necessary to hear from the victim as well. But if you're not comfortable with brunch, we can meet at the office later.
No. You're already here. It would be pointless to meet up later instead of taking care of this now.
I saw a nice cafe earlier.
Alright, sure. Well, unintentionally going on a date with somebody else. Sorry, Ari. I got distracted so easily. I lost the path. I lost the path before. Oh, isn't that just typical? Anyway, Beautiful is a great name for a cafe. Reuben was surprisingly amiable for a detective. I mean, I hadn't exactly met many. My younger brother had joined the safety department 2 years ago, but I hadn't met many of his colleagues. The way he talked about the special investigators always made it seem like they'd have been aloof and serious. Those were for local branches, though. I would imagine someone with Utpal to be even more aloof, though. Reuben wasn't like that at all. Didn't mean I wasn't nervous talking to him, but it helped that we were chatting at an open-air cafe and not a station somewhere. He was polite and professional, but also had a strange way of setting me at ease as we spoke. Yeah, I know what you mean. Oh man, he's even got the jacket off and everything. Aw, he's getting too comfy! Too comfy! Oh no!
So you had never seen the man before?
I hadn't. I mean, in fairness, I haven't done much but study lately, and go to and from the university. Even if he had been lurking around or anything, I doubt I'd have noticed.
And he doesn't seem the type to hang out with your average university student anyway.
No, he doesn't. I couldn't believe they still hadn't caught him. It seemed like he'd gone to ground after the incident, and they weren't sure how to find him, even though he stood out as dramatically as he did.
I'm sure having him go after you like that was frightening.
Yeah, you can tell by how much I was screaming. Reuben's brows lowered as he leaned across the table, pushing his half-eaten food out of the way.
You weren't hurt, were you? It seems you left the scene on your own afterwards, so I assumed you were fine.
I wasn't hurt, no. Just a little unnerved, that's all.
I'm glad. I suppose it's gotten around already, but you know the guy was an Esper, right?
I was pretty sure. And the news reports also mentioned it. I mean, he was really fast.
And the way that window shattered. We're assuming that was an accidental use of telekinesis. Probably sparked by him getting worked up like that.
Yep, definitely. The ability to affect the physical world without physical interaction. Telekinesis is another ubiquitous ability for Espers. Generally speaking, those who have an EA score above the planetary standard are capable of at least mild telekinesis, though some classifications of Espers, such as bishops and queens, specialize in high-level telekinesis. It can be used by all ranks and classes, even low-level Espers. Generally, telekinesis is safe to use on non-living solids. Most N-class Espers are not capable of utilizing telekinesis on liquids and gases, and attempting to use telekinesis on conscious humans is considered incredibly dangerous for the target. F-class Espers have demonstrated the ability to use telekinesis in unusual ways, and on substances or to achieve things that would not normally be considered possible. Interesting. F-class, you say?
From the way everything played out, his telekinesis is somewhat abnormal. But it's hard to say. To tell the truth, the way he chased after you, the way he fled and moved in general, it all indicates he has some Rook-like abilities.
Rook-ranked Espers usually score somewhere between an 8 to 12 on the EA scale. They possess biokinetic abilities that allow for physical enhancements beyond normal capacity, such as enhanced senses, strength, dexterity, or even processing and intelligence. Rooks also possess enhanced regeneration, telekinesis, and sometimes mild clairvoyance. Their telekinetic skills are usually on the weaker side, as most of their abilities rely on physical enhancement. That's why it's like, everything else is like Rook, but then that telekinetic thing was a bit strange. Though infantry are the most common sort of Esper, Rooks are the most common of the ranks. There are some who look down on this rank for its less flashy abilities, but a talented and high-level Rook is a formidable opponent, more than capable of holding their own against other Espers.
It would normally be strange for an Esper ranked that high to go unnoticed for so long, especially here in Cisalis. In the past, the only unregistered Espers that would turn up in New Albion totally unaffiliated were pretty low level. To be honest, when I first pulled up your file, I thought you might be one as well.
My heart rate skyrocketed instantly as soon as he said that.
I'm sure you get asked about the hair a lot.
Why, thank you for noticing. Oh, that. Yeah. I should have realized he'd bring that up. He was right that I got asked about it a fair amount. Thank goodness it was only that, though.
Well, it is unusual, if it's natural. I guess it's pretty rude to ask if it is or not, though. But I saw you were a part of a nano-overgrowth incident a while back, and after checking the before and after images...
Arcalis' nanosystem is capable of self-replication, which is usually done to replace malfunctioning nanites. An individual's nanosystem is designed to maintain a sort of equilibrium, where the nanite saturation within a person's body is unable to surpass a certain saturation level. Though some people have a higher nanite concentration than others, particularly those with nano expansions, there is a general range that is considered healthy for a normal human. However, there are instances when a person's individual nanosystem can begin to rapidly reproduce beyond the normal parameters. What exactly can spark a nanite overgrowth remains in debate, but there do seem to be some connections with proximity to awakening espers. There are numerous theories as to why a surge in psi energy would affect the nanosystem, but it's believed to have something to do with the connections between the nanites and an esper's phoric system. During an overgrowth event, reproduction spirals out of control and begins to damage or overwhelm a body's healthy cells. It can even lead to death. Because of the nanosystem's relation to psi abilities, nanite overgrowth stimulates the phoric system of the victim and can cause symptoms similar to burnout and fade. This is believed to have to do with resonance causing bursts of increased psi that quickly overload and damage the victim's body. Sometimes these symptoms are temporary, but they can remain as a lasting side effect of the overgrowth incident. Interesting. I don't really remember much about it, to be honest. I was quite young at the time. But you're right, the hair was a result of that.
You're lucky you survived it. A lot of people didn't.
I know.
Actually, my partner was involved in the same incident.
Oh, is that why their hair is kind of silvery? He was?
Seems like the two of you went to the same primary school. He was ahead of you by a couple of years, though.
Well, that's a small world. So the silver...
That part's natural. The pink apparently keeps him from having to answer annoying questions.
Ah. I guess that makes sense. People probably see that and assume the whole thing is a dye job.
I guess it's bothersome to constantly get asked about why you have fade symptoms.
Yes, what are those exactly? Fade is an affliction characterized by the fading of eye and hair color. It is a result of overuse of psi abilities. Fade typically only affects ranked espers with higher levels of ability, and is usually a precursor to psi burnout. It can result from power surging as well, usually first showing up after a bout of particularly bad psi fatigue. Fade can affect the pigmentation of hair and eyes, but typically starts with the hair. Once it shows up, the effect is usually, but not always, permanent. Interesting. So I guess that's why you can change your hair color, because you were involved in this incident, but maybe you didn't get fade? Is that what? I'm assuming a lot, aren't I? I'm like, is that why But then if you choose to go white, then it's like, ah, you were affected by the fade. Yes. Still, that was surprising. I guess it really was a small world, wasn't it? I hadn't realized that anyone else from that incident was left with the hair fade like me.
So I guess it's probably not something you like talking about either, huh? It was probably a little insensitive to bring it up.
It's alright. Like you said, I do get asked about it a lot. Both of us were silent for a moment. Going back to what we were talking about previously, the man was a ranked Esper, you were saying?
Well, possibly. Like I said, it's rare for one to go unnoticed so long here. Usually, if Endgame doesn't home in on someone early, someone else swoops in and shelters them, or keeps them away from prying eyes until they're older. So by the time they do surface, they're affiliated with someone, some faction or other. This guy doesn't seem to be.
I lowered my eyes to the tabletop thoughtfully. Unaffiliated. You said in the past earlier?
Well, you've probably heard of F-class Espers, right? Though I guess you're more likely to have heard them called fairies.
Of course I have.
Then you're probably aware there's still a lot we don't know about them. They work by a whole different set of rules. Endgame doesn't seem to be able to detect them the way they can with N-class, and they can slip through the normal testing in schools as well.
There are Espers that developed as the direct result of Arcalis' nanites altering human physiology to be able to utilize the nanosystem's functions. Also called N-class Espers, they've been around since the earlier days of settlement on the planet, first appearing only a few years after ships arrived, though no one was really aware of it until the Civil War because they were so uncommon. Their abilities are well understood and fall into a series of strictly defined ranks based on the type of skill they display, as well as their EA scores. The current system of ranking and scoring Espers is based on the N-class Esper type, and they remain the most prevalent type of Esper in Arcalis.
More and more of these Esper-related incidents result from these fairies causing issues or getting caught up in things. Not just lower-level ones either. These days we have cases with unaffiliated Espers on par with named nano-ranks like Rooks or Knights.
Knight-ranked Espers usually score somewhere between 8 to 12 on the EA scale. Their abilities are usually oriented around teleportation of varying types, size shields of varying strength, very strong clairvoyance, and telekinesis. There is a wide range of variation in how teleportation skills manifest. Some knights require line of sight, or can only teleport to places they've been. Some have a relatively small radius in which they can travel, while others require a medium of some sort to travel through. Generally, the further the distance and the more complicated the travel, the stronger clairvoyance that is required to do so safely. Wonder if our ARI boy is a knight. I don't know, something about paladin. Knight, paladin. It could be. Maybe he's a paladin. I mean, maybe he's a knight is what I mean.
And I've got a feeling it's only going to get worse from here.
He suddenly seemed aware of the dark tone the conversation had taken.
Oh, I didn't mean that to sound so dire. I just mean that Espers among the general populace are probably going to become more commonplace. It's not like Espers are a problem. Espers are normal citizens like everyone else and deserve the same protections in my opinion. But even the SI department struggles to manage some of these cases, so it's always worrying when we come across a ranked Esper like this guy.
He rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. You seem pretty well versed in Espers.
Well, most of the crime Special Investigations looks at are Esper-related. Even before fairies showed up, there were plenty of infantry levels that were unregistered. Or registered and working for your average organization or company out here instead of with Endgame. Now it's becoming more commonplace.
I didn't realize the situation with fairies was actually a significant concern.
Well, I think some attention is given to how it's presented in the media, but of growing importance, yes. Just hasn't really blown up significantly yet.
Yet, huh? Which meant he thought it would at some point, probably. Though that was another problem. I had other things to worry about at the moment. I was glad it looked like he wasn't questioning my status at all for now. Though it felt a little unfair the other guy was getting all the blame for destroying public property.
Sorry I went off on a tangent like that. I was supposed to be listening to your side of what happened yesterday.
It's alright.
I know the guy was saying some pretty off-the-wall things. I guess there's not much chance you can make sense of it.
Not really, but... At one point he quoted a play. I'm not sure there's really any relevance to that either, though.
A play? That's unusual. I assume you know which play if you recognize the quote.
It's called A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Huh. Never heard of it. I have to admit, I don't watch many plays.
Well, it's pretty old. From Earth, actually. His eyebrow shot up almost comically at that.
Earth? Really? Huh. Doubt that's required reading for his sort.
His sort?
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean anything by that. I imagine that sounded pretty jaded.
I hope I didn't seem accusatory. I'm sure you see a lot in your line of work, so it's easy to become jaded.
It is. But I try hard to stay unbiased. I shouldn't have said that.
I'll pretend I didn't hear it.
I'll make sure to leave it off the records, too.
Oh, we got a CG with him after our cute cafe date, eh? I guess I'll accept it. Look at those luscious lips. Gonna have to smooch them at some point, but not now! I will not be distracted. More than I have already been. Because I've already been distracted. It's fine! I watched him as he looked down at the display in his hand, typing into it with a frown. It was strange seeing someone use a handheld device for something like that. Though I could understand it, sometimes I prefer to take notes by hand as well. It helped me remember them better. Same. Because I was actively engaging with the content, I suppose. Perhaps it was the same for him. He really took his job seriously. Not that I'd have expected anything else, of course.
Still.
Reuben looked thoughtful for a moment.
A Midsummer Night's Dream, huh? I'll have to look it up. And what about the guy we saw you with after the fact? Who was he? We haven't been able to identify him either.
But you identified me right away? Reuben shrugged.
Your records were easy to find. The attacker, not so much. The guy that helped you, also a no.
Ah, that man. He told me his name was Ariel Vaughn. Other than that, I don't know anything about him. I thought he might be some kind of officer or something. I got the feeling he was chasing that man.
We don't have footage of him from any other camera in the area. The one that was near you at the time fuzzed out for a few minutes. We assume it was interference from the use of Psi.
Can that happen?
Sometimes, depending on the Psi waves being emitted. When the camera feed comes back, Mr. Vaughn is already there.
Because he teleported in like a knight! Oh, it's all coming together! I felt like Joey from Friends, where my eyes just slowly widened with realization, like, I think that guy's a knight! Oh, amazing. He did seem to come out of nowhere, but I was also sort of covering my head, so...
Well, I definitely like to speak to him, but it seems like that may not be easy.
I'm sorry. I wish I could help.
Don't worry about it. In the end, you were just dragged into something that has nothing to do with you. None of it's your fault.
Well, that was slick. He stood and slipped his jacket back on before he held out his hand. I did the same as I took it. His hands were warm as he gave mine a very gentle squeeze.
Thank you for your time, Morgan. I appreciate it, and I apologize for taking up so much of your day.
No, it's fine. I just wish I could have been more help.
I want you to know that, at this time, we have no reason to believe this was anything other than a random attack. The man was an Esper, but he also seemed to be exhibiting signs of substance abuse. I don't think you have any reason to be worried about him coming after you again or anything like that. But I'll inform you when he's in custody. I'm sure it'll help you sleep better.
What makes you think I won't be able to sleep?
I didn't want to say anything, but those are some pretty dark circles under your eyes.
Ah! I hadn't even paid attention to that before I left the house. Reuben laughed as I put a hand to my face.
Well, maybe it's just from staying up too late studying. I hear sleep deprivation is a chronic issue for higher-tier students here in New Albion.
I'll say. I hesitated, lowering my eyes briefly. That man, when you find him, what will happen to him?
Worried about him.
Well, like you said, he seemed to be in need of medical treatment, that's all.
That'll obviously be on the top of the list. We need to find out exactly what's wrong with him and get him treated, of course. But he's going to have to be held responsible to some degree for what happened. He assaulted a member of the public, damaged property.
He smiled gently at my expression.
But no one was seriously injured, so I'm sure that the consequences won't be too severe.
I'm glad to hear that. He released my hand and stepped away from our table.
I'll be in touch. You take care of yourself, Morgan.
I will. Thank you, Reuben. I wish I could have been more help.
No need to apologize at all. I'm sure we'll talk again.
He shot me another smile and wave before he left. What a nice man. I was glad that I ended up talking to him instead of trying to convince him to let me wait. In spite of the topic, it hadn't really been that bad. When he was gone, I sat heavily back in my seat, thinking over the conversation. Fairies, huh? It's always damn fairies. What was more curious was that they hadn't found the identity of my rescuer. I assumed they did a face recognition search to find me. Even though I had sent in a report, the fact that I had 2 messages from them suggested they may have identified me separately as well. But it seemed like a face recognition search hadn't worked on ARI. But why not? Every citizen would have a public record that should pull up a match fairly easily. It wasn't really my job to find that out, but I couldn't help but wonder. Still, I had other things to do, and this was just something I wanted to put behind me.